Let's start with a game I had zero read on. Cincinnati's win at Buffalo. Now, to say this part of it, Cincinnati beating Buffalo is not some shocking thing, okay? This isn't like Miami beating Buffalo in Buffalo last week. But let's run through the Buffalo profile here again. And this might be my fault for thinking Buffalo was going to win this game by looking at this stuff. Okay, they're 13-3. The 3 losses were by a total of 9 points. Arguably fluky losses. Their turnover margin, although they had lost the turnover margin in 4 of 8 games, remember 3 they had won it, 1 there was a push. We covered that last week. It was still an 8-game winning streak, right? Their point differential was plus 169. That was number 1 in the AFC, 42 points better than Kansas City, who was number 2, obviously, in that conference. And again, being number 2 to San Francisco overall in the NFL, well, they're in the AFC. So arguably that point differential is the most impressive thing. They were down 14-0 in this game, and then a stat comes up that it's only the second time they'd faced a double-digit deficit all season long, going all the way back to the Baltimore win. Their offensive yards per play were number 2. Opponents' yards per play number 7. Their offense was number 1 on third down conversion. Their defense was number 6 against third down. The one thing that felt like it was kind of an issue was the red zone touchdown percentage. That was still 9th in the NFL. So how do they lose? Well, they kept turning the football over. No, they didn't. They turned it over once, and it was late. It wasn't even a factor. They got their asses kicked. In a game at home where they don't lose playoff games, right? They've only lost at this place one time before. They looked like the team that wasn't comfortable, right? In the snow. You can even factor in the Damar Hamlin story a little bit for motivation, right? They looked like a team that already had won a few times. All right, we already have a Super Bowl in our back pocket. We're not as up for this. Just to watch them be so soft for 3.5 hours flat. You know, this is supposed to be kind of like those NBA playoff storylines where it's like you lose early and then, you know, sometimes that works and it's part of the story. It's like we were tested. We had to get through this team. Then we had to get through this team. And then that team had to get through us. And it felt like it was lining up for the Bills. Yes, there were concerns. You brought up the Von Miller pass rush numbers where they're a completely different team in the pass rush. The O-line, though, for Cincinnati was supposed to be a big part of this, and it wasn't. And I don't think it's wrong to go, wait, your left tackles never played left tackle before? 3 total starters are missing in this? That was the left tackle's first start at that position in an NFL game. And Baltimore, who got after Burrow a little bit, Buffalo got him one time. One time. That was the game. And when you watch the start of it, you kind of felt like, is Cincinnati using their weapons in a way where Buffalo can't? You know, it looked like Cincinnati wanted to get out there and start moving the football. Buffalo had 2 3-and-outs to start where it looked like they couldn't do anything. Stephon Diggs, 4 catches, 36 yards. Up against a secondary of Cincinnati that definitely doesn't get enough credit when you start talking about the better positional groups out there. I know Diggs had the sideline outburst a little bit later in the game, and I kind of get it, so I don't want to be too harsh about it. But at the same time, you're like, fuck, now, dude? Now you're going to start getting in our case? It wasn't because they didn't get it to Diggs. It wasn't really one thing. It was everything. Like nothing worked out for him. There was a couple plays like this score could have been worse. I'm glad it was 27-10 because I didn't want it to get a late touchdown where years removed, somebody would have argued that it was a 27-17 game or some 27-20 game that happens in the NFL, and it'll be lost to history as some kind of close competitive game because it wasn't. The score should have been worse. Of course, we had 2 TV breaks during 2 of the biggest moments in the entire game. The Chase touchdown, which was overturned, which I actually thought was correct because it didn't look like he had possession through the end of the catch. I know there's a lot of debate on that one. I actually thought Allen did fumble it, even though they overturned that fumble into an incomplete pass. I thought that was actually the wrong call. But now with this new thing that we have going on, although replays in general have been expedited and it's been a little bit better, we've entered this new phase of where these massive moments are happening and they can't wait to get us to a commercial. And then you come back, we're like, hey, this is what's been settled and we're good to go. Not saying I'm dying to wait around and watch 5 to 6 minutes of replay, although again, it is going a little bit quicker. There was also the review of the Mixon touchdown. I know there's a bunch of people out there that are hot on the chip in the football. I asked the chip in the football this, does it know when it's down before you think that solves all of our problems? Does the chip in the football know when it's down? That would be an impressive chip. I just can't believe a team that's this good would get dominated at home like this. It's not impossible, certainly, for Cincinnati to go in and win this game. They're a really good football team, and maybe the favorite of the four remaining to win this whole thing. I'm kind of feeling that way a little bit, certainly with the Mahomes injury down in Kansas City. So it wasn't, as I said earlier, like Miami going in and winning their first game. And like Skylar Thompson went into Buffalo and beat Josh Allen. No, that's not what this is. Bengals are really good. But to be housed like this at home, it's going to linger. It's going to be annoying. I mentioned the doubt portal for Herbert, which can be fair or unfair. I don't know that's going to happen to Allen. I think the Allen throw to Gabe Davis on the sidelines, the best throw I saw all weekend from any quarterback. And that's why even with Buffalo's lack of ability to run the football, which has always been an issue, and maybe not having the playmakers, well, they don't have the playmakers that Cincinnati has. You're going, well, this guy can still figure out a way to pull it out. And you could even see him starting to force the issue a little bit, meaning like, I'm going to have to do this on my own here. And you're still wondering if you can pull it off because he's that good. That throw to Gabe Davis was insane. But it didn't matter because it just wasn't enough from anything else. And now Burrow's put together a resume here where he had a win at Tennessee last year against the 1 seed. Granted, I didn't think the Titans were the greatest 1 seed of all time, but it looked like he was going to get killed in that game. Wins. Comes back from down 21-10 at Kansas City and complete domination of Buffalo. So Burrow continues to add to the resume. Could get back to another Super Bowl in back-to-back years, and who knows what they're capable of, because at this point, Cincinnati cannot be doubted. Let's talk San Francisco and Dallas. Okay, two great defenses, one unknown quarterback in Purdy versus another quarterback in Dak, who do we now know who he is? Seems like it's unfair perhaps in one playoff game against a terrific defense in the Niners. But as I've said throughout the years of watching Dak, it's kind of become a running joke, at least with myself, because I don't know that it's that funny. I just every week with him, or the course of long stretches where he puts up good numbers, I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if is he really this awesome? Is he going to be one of the all-time guys? I mean, look at last year's numbers: 37 touchdowns, 10 picks. The splits were incredible. 69% completion rate for his career. He's won 66 touchdowns and 65 interceptions. QBR, maybe that tells a little bit more of the story. 11th the last 2 years. Missed a year prior to that. Go back 4 years. In 19, he was 14th. But the throws and decisions in this game were awful. Awful. I know it's a great defense, but it really was all on him. And there's too many times where we look at the player and we want to make it about something else. We want to blame the coach. We want to blame the play calling. That's not what this was. This was all on Dak. And I know why fans always want to blame the coach or play calling, because it's way easier to fix that than the quarterback that you've paid well over $100 million in guaranteed money. So the first pick, you could argue the route was part of the problem. So you want that one? You want that one is not on Dak? Fine, I'll give it to you. I don't need it, because as much as there will be times where I'm reluctant, because again, I didn't play the position. I'm not a coach. I don't watch the all 22. When coaches in the post game are like, well, I got to look at the film. They're not doing that to be evasive. They really mean it, because you end up learning all these different things. I actually think Dak provided us a game where it was the rare occasion where you could just watch the game on the TV broadcast and go, he sucks today. And this is a major problem. So let's go back to some of the bad decisions. I just wrote these down after the game. If I went through it, I'd probably find more bad ones. First pick, meh. All right, fine. We'll call that a push. The second pick was awful. He just didn't see the coverage. That thing where you think you have it open to the side because you're just not even looking at the defender that stays down in zone. The deep shot against Fred Warner. I know exactly what he was trying to do on this. It's 3rd and 8, though. It's a huge spot. They run the 4 verts, but Ezekiel Elliott was wide open underneath, and he wanted to attack a linebacker on that route with CeeDee Lamb, who was his biggest playmaker in the passing game, which I understand. But it's also Fred Warner. So I get quarterbacks are going to always be like, wait, I got a linebacker running with my number one option. But it's Fred Warner. He's like one of the few guys where that's not an automatic win. And there was the free cheese, as Daniel Jeremiah likes to say, underneath. It was right there in a huge spot on 3rd and 8. He didn't want to take it. He had a 3rd and 8 behind CeeDee where it was way behind him, and Lamb turns back. Like, what was that throw? Again, it could happen. The third pick that, again, wasn't a pick, because he only had 2 in the game, he throws one to Greenlaw late where they're still in this game because both defenses are so great. He doesn't see Greenlaw at all. That was going to be a pick 6, end the game. That was going to be it. It was over. And Greenlaw, again, it was so close. He's like, it happens with defensive guys, especially on the edge. And then with 45 seconds left at their own 6-yard line, So it's not ideal. You're going to go the full length of the field to get the touchdown. It's likely not happening at all. First down, he almost gets sacked for a safety. And you're watching going like, there's only one thing you can't do. You have all these other things. You can throw a completion. You can throw it out of bounds. You can throw it down in the dirt, get outside of the pocket. You could run it out of the front of the end zone and lose yards. He almost takes it. He should have been sacked for a safety. I have no idea what was going on with him yesterday, but I know it wasn't Mike McCarthy's fault and it wasn't Kellen Moore on the play calling. I'm not telling you it was all great, but this was an alarming Dak game. So now you look at San Francisco's defense. Look at this number. Since Purdy's taken over in week 13, the Niners have started 22 drives in opponent's territory. 22. Jacksonville's next over that span with 13. Dallas D was so fast that I thought there really wasn't much there to the edges, the stuff that San Francisco likes to do. They just couldn't do it for a good chunk of the game. Credit to Dallas' defense for being that fast and that active. They were terrific. They're a huge part of the success of this team. But second half, they got the downhill running game going. I thought there were some really cool route things that they did on two specific plays. One was the Ayuk play where they got him matched up on somebody else, where it was kind of Shanahan by design, which just makes Purdy's life way easier. And the game was totally changed on the Kittle 31-yard reception, what seemed impossible. It looked like Diggs was going to be able to get him. I don't know if he pulled up because he was afraid of a penalty or if he just timed it wrong, because if he hits him, I don't think Kittle actually comes down with that football, and Diggs completely missed it. But again, I don't really blame the guys in the secondary for pulling up a little bit more with the way flags fly around. And then he gets the penalty late. Kittle starts celebrating. They go in for the score, and that's kind of the game. Dallas, how about this number? Since they last played in the NFC Championship game back in 1995, 26 teams have played in the conference championship game. Since then, Dallas has not. I want to close with this because there's the QB perception game. I could turn this into an entire open. We could do much more on this, but I'm going to make it quick here. Looking at the 8 quarterbacks from this past weekend and what this means. Burrow, the arrow is going up. We've covered the resume. There's a chance to go to he'll, again, I don't think he's Mahomes. I guess you'd have to say at this point, maybe physically Allen is still more impressive. But I don't know. There's going to be many people going like, hey, Allen definitely over Burrow at this point. And again, you could talk head-to-head matchup, but we know there's a lot more going on than just two quarterbacks going up against each other. I'm very protective of anyone challenging Mahomes for that top spot. But if Burrow were to pull this thing off, it kind of depends on how these next couple games go. Well, it's available. It's available to even have that conversation. I'm just not saying we're there yet. Hurts, it was just a great reminder. I love what we saw from the Eagles. 268 rushing yards, the 5th highest total in a playoff game in the last 20 years. They didn't even need Hurts to necessarily go off. I think they're going to need him against San Francisco. But just a little reminder of who this Eagles team is, more so than just the quarterback. Mahomes, we wait. I do feel like it was turning into a bit of the only guy that's ever played with a sprained ankle in a football game. But then that sounds like I'm actually being negative about Mahomes, and I'm not. I mean, the guy's incredible. So I don't really I have nothing to say. There's nothing else to say here other than him just trying to add to a resume that's going to be the only thing that holds him back from going after some of the other top guys. I don't know how anybody ever catches Brady, but the physical gifts and the automatic wins and carrying bad defenses and all that stuff, there's really not much more to say there. Purdy, TBD. There's probably going to be some dumb shit said if he ends up in a Super Bowl. He handles pressure really well, though. I did mean to say that earlier. He's tough. He doesn't seem to get rattled. All that stuff's terrific. I'm just real stubborn when it comes to quarterbacks that are young and maybe with the background of like, wait, this is going to be a guy. Like, he's going to be really good. And we know what Shanahan does with pretty much anyone that plays behind center. But yeah, when I mean dumb stuff is I think there's a chance you could hear some really lofty praise on what he could be and where his standing is, and start floating around with some rankings that, to me, we'd have to see another season from Purdy to even go there, but you're going to hear it. Lawrence, I don't know. It was a bad pick. They actually ran the ball well in that game against Kansas City, but nobody thought they were going to win that game. It's not a big deal. I think it really comes down to, well, I don't even think I'm going to put Allen in this next group. He's going to deal with stuff next year. It's going to be annoying. He's still terrific. I'm not worried about him. I think we worry about the rest of the Bills roster and how it compares to Kansas City and Cincinnati, who they're going to be having to deal with for many years to come. And that also leaves out Baltimore with a healthy Lamar Jackson and whatever happens there, if he's even there next year. It really comes down to the QB perception game applies to two different quarterbacks here. Daniel Jones, I'd ask you this, Giants fans. Is it worse that it kind of worked out this year even though you decline the option, you could franchise tag him. But if he ends up being the guy and getting paid because it feels like there's a slight improvement. Actually, it was dramatic improvement. He stopped turning the football over. Dable and this staff did a much better job with him than the previous regime. And part of that's on him and everything else. But if you pay him and he's a little bit more like the Eagles guy than he is the Vikings guy, and the Vikings guy is an outlier game. It really is. It would feel maybe a bit like my buddy who got married because he was going bald. And I was like, huh? He's like, I don't think I'll do any better than her. I'm starting to lose my hair. I was like, I don't think that's the best reason to get married. I got to be honest with you. And he just sort of shrugged. I don't know that he's happy. Dak. He's going to take the biggest hit, and he deserves to. And maybe that's the point. Stop wondering where he ranks and stop pretending that he's one of the top 10 guys. It was just such a bad game that I think it's going to hurt him. The carryover going into next year and all the topics and all the Monday stuff and all the shows, and he's going to put up numbers. I think his perception took the biggest hit this weekend.